So as of the 29th of February 2024, we've had a new development blog post from the team behind Project Zomboid, and there's some really good stuff in this one, from gameplay of new features, some more crafting insights, a look at upcoming map areas, and some techie stuff too, if that's your bag. In this video, I'll be doing my usual and covering all of the things you need to know about this development update, summarizing where possible, and throwing in a dash of speculation or personal thoughts here and there. If you want to give the blog post a full read, the link is in the description. But before we go any further, I'm here to save your balls. No, not shave your balls. You'll be doing that part yourself with today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Manscaped and the Perfect Package 5.0 Ultra, featuring the brand new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra electric trimmer. Now, speaking from experience here, nobody likes feathers on their eggs, and just like it's important to keep your survivor well dressed and well groomed to maintain maximum fashion boy appearances, so too is it important you take care of yourself outside the game. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra elevates your grooming game with its next-gen dual skin-safe blade heads, now accompanied by an upgraded trimmer blade and interchangeable foil blade for enhanced performance. This is going to leave aforementioned eggs feather-free and irresistibly smooth on the first pass. No repeat coverage needed, and all in the time it'll take your survivor to complete a full wash and shave in Project Zomboid. If that's not enough, the Perfect Package 5.0 Ultra comes with the Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose hair trimmer, a bottle of crop soother aftershave lotion, crop preserver, anti-chafing deodorant, disposable shaving mats, and both a free toiletry bag and a free pair of boxers to hold your eggs. Use my link in the description and head to manscaped.com, or use the code MrAD at the checkout and get yourself free shipping with a huge 20% off. Trust me lads, your balls will thank you. Alright, so let's get right into the good stuff with this one straight away, with some gameplay of the much anticipated underground basements and elevation systems. If you're not familiar with this already, essentially Build 42 is set to bring in both some randomized basements for residential areas, but also fixed points of interest that will be attached to select locations on the map. Now in this Thursdoid, the developers took the opportunity to show off a full-blown underground bunker that we'll be able to find somewhere in the world at an unspecified location in Build 42. The footage is just under 3 minutes long, showcasing a survivor exploring the cramped hallways of the bunker and some of the fantastic lighting that's going to come with the new lighting system. Something to keep an eye on here: as the survivors descend further into the bunker, the light gradually becomes dimmer. When a door is opened to a room with a light on, that light spills into the hallway appropriately and just adds that extra level of immersion to the experience. Now, I'm taking a guess here because this isn't mentioned in the blog post itself, but I'm speculating that this is some kind of government installation, based on the fact the zombies the survivor encounters look to be a mix of security personnel and scientists or researchers in white lab coats. Again, it's just my speculation, and it could just be that the zombies were spawned to look the part for this clip, but I guess we'll find out once Build 42 drops. The developers go on to make a note they've also been building on sound effects for these kind of environments to aid in that claustrophobic feeling when venturing through underground points of interest. This will include things like cutting out wildlife sounds as you descend further away from the ground level, adding muffle, echo, dripping sounds, and stuff like that to ultimately build on the atmosphere. Likewise, as we scale high buildings and increase our elevation, the noise of street level activity will be appropriately reduced. Lastly, before moving on to the next section of the blog post, the developers do mention here that we won't be able to adjust or destroy the walling of underground structures, at least when we first get our hands on Build 42. The developers state it would be healthy for the engine to be able to do this, but that it's a can of worms that they would prefer to open later down the line once Build 42 is firmly in place, which I can respect. Next up, we're on to some crafting news, and this is going to be a seemingly small detail that I think will actually end up being a significant change for a lot of players that will take some getting used to. Essentially, some of the crafting that takes place in Project Zomboid right now will require a surface of some kind to complete in Build 42. This doesn't necessarily need to be a workbench, it could just be a table or a cabinet, but ultimately, the idea is to keep things realistic and logical. As an example, the developers developers explain that things like ripping up clothing to acquire bandages or opening a can of beans will very much still be possible on the go. But if you're doing something like hammering nails into a baseball bat or making a sandwich, you'll need a surface of some kind to support you whilst you work. You will not be able to do this anymore whilst just standing in the street. I think the ultimate idea here is to create some element of performing crafting in the proper place, rather than just being able to complete actions to help you in combat whilst in combat itself. I mean, I suppose it is realistic in a way that we wouldn't just stop in the middle of the road and start hammering some nails into our weapon whilst we have a horde of zombies on our tail. We'd much prefer to do something like that with some peace and quiet and just to be able to concentrate, right? Anyway, the devs are aware that this will be a significant adjustment for players, and they do note in the dev blog itself how keenly this might be felt by players. But again, reassure us that they are keeping things logical and there's still a lot of basic crafting that will be possible on the move. Right now, the challenge for the team is creating an interface that solves all of their goals and presents it in an easily legible format for players. Browsing of recipes, crafting of multiple items, and allowing the use of tools to modify things like success chance or quality whilst maintaining access to all of the new crafting features coming in Build 42. The team say they are at a stage where all of this functionally works and the code is there. However, on the surface level, it's not ready to be used just yet and needs integrating into the game with a usable interface. Just a couple of images were given in this one when it comes to crafting as well. We see a forged garden fork, a forged cup, and a forged can opener, which I'm sure will solve a lot of problems for players if you find yourself in that position where you've got a cabinet full of canned goods with no way to open them efficiently. Okay, so next on the list for today is multiplayer work from the dedicated multiplayer development team. Now, there's a lot of jargon here and a bit of, well, to be honest, a lot of words that just aren't needed. So I'll cut this one down into bullet points for you as to what the team are currently working on. Number 1, privacy and anti-cheat. We aren't given much in the way of specifics, but work is ongoing for anti-cheat functionality and adding, I quote, various new mechanisms. Number 2, improving synchronization of characters between clients. Now, if you've ever played multiplayer, you'll likely know exactly what this is referring to. Essentially, when a player or a zombie seems to just jump to a location, this is an issue where one client believes that the entity is in one location and the other client has a totally different location for them, resulting in a pretty big jump when they do sync up again. Number 3, PvP animations and logging. Now, I don't actually play much PvP myself, but apparently the way characters react to being hit and players disconnecting during PvP can make things not so fun. So this is a focus for the multiplayer team currently. And lastly, number 4, safe houses. There are several exploits and issues relating to safe house raids that the team are currently looking to fix. Again, there's no specifics mentioned here, but they also mentioned some nice to have improvements that they'll be showing off in future blog posts. The writer of the blog post itself notes that these aren't the only things the multiplayer side of the team are working on right now, but that is what is in their sights currently. There's also an interesting new feature that's coming down the line at the moment for Build 42, which we've not heard of before, essentially allowing players to disguise themselves if they have access to proper face or head equipment to do so. For example, a player could equip a mask and hide their username from other players as a result, if the server has the feature enabled. The developers are pointing this towards the PvP and RP communities with the hope it will add an extra layer to the experience. Admins will also be able to replicate this function if enabled. If the server owner prefers, they can just disable this feature in safe houses or disable it entirely. After this segment, the devs get into a very small section on how they're making some of the traits in Project Zomboid have some more tangible and direct ramifications. For example, we get a clip in this Thursdoid showing us some work that's ongoing for vision-related negative traits. The character in the video drops their glasses, and all of a sudden, they can't quite see very well. Now, they do say that this is a very heavy work in progress, and it doesn't represent how it's going to look when things are done. It's just a bit of an example as to what kind of thing they're aiming for. I know I'm already going to see a bunch of comments saying this vision effect is way too heavy, so yeah, just keep in mind that this will be changing according to the devs. They also mention that similar but not identical effects are in the works for when a character is wearing helmets or other headgear pieces that might narrow the survivor's vision. Now, a few few blogs previous, you might remember seeing a certain Wild West tourist town that was teased by the developers as part of the new areas being added to the existing vanilla map. Well, in this Thursdoid, we've been lucky enough to get some footage of this rootin' tootin' town in action, and it's looking pretty damn cool to say the least. The devs note that the wooden coffins shown in this footage are also brand new creations. I don't know about you guys, but this is going to be the first place I'm going to make a safe house when Build 42 drops. Okay, so this next bit might not be as important to some of the veteran players watching this, and I know that's likely a large portion of you, but hopefully you'll be able to appreciate the value of a feature like this one for newer players, especially since Project Zomboid is such a difficult game and many people just give up after a couple of hours trying to make it by. Now, with that in mind, there's some work going on at the moment to integrate a system called Bink into Project Zomboid. This is a piece of middleware that can be used to play cutscenes, videos, and stuff like that within video games. The team state that this is primarily being implemented for what they call cosmetic changes that we'll discover when booting up the game, but they don't reveal what that means on this particular Thursdoid. They're also using it to show some tutorial videos in-game, which should be a big improvement for new players that get into the game when Build 42 releases. They also mentioned that in future there's a possibility that this could be used for moving images on TV screens or in cinemas you'll find in-game, but that this is a luxury that will come long after Build 42 reaches the unstable branch. And okay, I know they've just said it's a luxury, but I can't express how much I want to see a Spiffo movie trailer. I'm just putting it out there, devs. Last in this section of smaller tidbits, the devs tell us that work with upscaling the UI to 4K is going well. In fact, it's nearly done at this point, and it'll shortly become available in the internal testing build. With that in mind, some new, more detailed moodles have been shown in this blog with the purpose of providing higher quality at higher resolutions. It's pretty cool, although I will miss the nostalgic feeling of the old moodles, and I hope that they will give us an option to keep them if we want to. Okay, so next we're getting into a bit more detail about some of the procedural generation features that were mentioned in the last dev blog with regards to the map. If you're not already familiar, this sort of tech is going to be used in forest areas of the map where no towns are located to extend the map boundary for modders. Right now, Prof Mobius is working on automatic blending between the edge of handcrafted sections of the map to that of the newer procedurally generated wilderness. This will allow for smoother transitions without a visible border that shows where one starts and the other ends. This will be particularly useful for modders, apparently, since right now it's actually quite a difficult task to blend modded maps with the vanilla map. The new system will essentially add procedural elements gradually with vegetation that exists on the modded map, so the border will be less jarring to players. On top of this, Prof Mobius is also looking into generating roads that continue past the borders of the main map, which the devs say will massively extend the canvas for modders to position their own modded maps. This will result in much less conflicts between modded maps. There are definitions being added to the code for biomes, which will allow for easy modding when it comes to selecting said biomes for their own maps. The idea here is for this system to create huge swaths of wilderness with a convenient road network to utilize too. The devs say here, and I quote, "It's our hope that a heavily map modded game could have a truly huge gameplay area hundreds of times bigger than currently, with potentially miles of wilderness between major locations added by modders." Alright, so that brings us nicely to the really technical part of this dev blog, and to be honest with you, I'm not going to be covering it in this video, straight up. It's several paragraphs of details about a new system that only really affects modders. This is a debug GUI library known as IMGUI. This is set to replace the Lua-based debug interfaces currently in the game, and without getting into any further detail, the devs say this is basically the industry standard for providing powerful, easy to implement debugging UIs for game engines. And I'll take their word for it because I know absolutely nothing about this stuff. Still, if you want to give this a full read or you're a modder yourself, there is a whole bunch of images and plenty of text in this section to read through. I'd be here for ages covering it, so I really do think it's best for those interested to just go and give this section a read. Okay, so with that, we're on to the last section of this dev blog, and we've got something for the firearms enthusiasts amongst us, and it actually shows a bit of that IMG UI at work as well. We get some footage here of Fenris testing some firearms on the firing range with IMG UI active. He's currently working on making firearms more useful at lower skill levels for survivors without breaking balance. There's some tweaks coming for accuracy based on the player's actions as well, which is interesting stuff, and I'm sure all of that will be music to the ears of players that are sick of grinding skill levels to use the better firearms in the game currently. We see factors such as delay between shots, recoil, movement penalties, and other aspects coming into play here as the firearms are tested, with the IMG UI interface displaying tools to tweak certain characteristics on the fly and a graph to report feedback to the modder during testing. Aside from ongoing work to rebalance how hit chances and recoil are calculated, there will also be improved target highlighting for firearms, which right now can be a bit misleading at times. The aiming reticle will now start to transfer to green only if the chances to hit are around 80%. Strength will now help with recoil control, with the two traits dexterous and all thumbs impacting on shouldering the weapon, and the two traits eagle-eyed and short-sighted affecting optimal sight range. Lastly, rates of fire have been increased to be a bit more realistic, but it does now take time to stabilize your aim when initially shouldering a weapon after each shot. This time is reduced by aiming skills, traits, and other conditions. And obviously, firing fully automatic is less accurate than taking your time with each shot. So that's it from me in this one, folks, but if you enjoyed this video and you find yourself watching my Thursdoid summary videos often, please do consider dropping the video a like and subscribing to the channel for all things Project Zomboid. I'd love to welcome more of you folks to our community, and this is a great way to get started. Lastly, a very special thank you to all of the folks who have subscribed to my Patreon to support the channel for £3 a month, whilst also grabbing access to our whitelisted Project Zomboid server, where we test new mods, overhauls, and themes every single month, including the new wilderness map that we're going to be trying out this month, created by our very own Simon MD to go with our wilderness survival mod pack. Thanks, folks. I'll see you all in the next one.